Well, hello and how are you? Welcome to Class A CDL training with Cowlitz County Public Works. Do me a favor and smash that like and subscribe button down below. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that. All right, before we get started, a few housekeeping things to keep in mind. Number one is this is going to be a long video. I hate to say it. There's a lot of information, a lot of things to cover. It's going to be about an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and a half. But all you have to do is sit back and watch. You won't have to, well, can't say that. You will have to click on a couple links. I do have a couple videos. Now the links on the video aren't going to work because it's just a YouTube video. Haven't gotten that figured out yet, but I did email separately the list of links, so there's going to be times where you need to pause it and click on the link and open up a different video and then come back to this one. So just have that ready to go. Throughout the video you'll have questions or comments. You can write those down, so at the end of the video you can get in touch with me, answer any questions. You can text me, call me, email me, any questions or comments. You can give me feedback, just as long as you are polite. So let's get into this. So welcome to CDL training. This is a big deal. Congratulations. It's a big moment for you. It was a big moment for me when I got mine. I remember times were a little bit different. Back when I got mine 30 years ago this year, all you had to do was go to the DMV, pay $7, get your permit. You didn't have to do any testing written until you actually wanted to get your license. So it's a little different now, but you know, I still had to do the written test. I still had to do the drive test. A little more rules now today than there were back then, but same concept. We're the only county in Western Washington that does their in-house CDL training. All the other counties will either hire people with CDLs, or they will hire people without CDLs, send them out to training school. Along with that, some counties will have the new person sign a contract saying that if you were to get trained and leave within a year or two, you have to pay money back. We don't have anything like that in place. Our focus now is we're not worried about that. We want to get you trained. We want to put that investment into you to make our organization better. That's what it's all about right now. There's a quote that came from some businessman, and the question was, what if we train them and they leave? And the businessman says, what if we don't train them and they stay? So that's something to think about. What's been keeping our program going strong are great trainers. We have great trainers here who've devoted a lot of time and effort, energy into the program, and thank you guys to those who have done it. But also we have great trainees, people like you. So thank you very much. You're what makes our program such a success, and we want you to be a success also. So that's our main goal. As long as we've been doing this, it's been going well. However, there were some new rules put into place February 7th, 2022. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which is part of the USDOT, put in new rules into effect. This is for anybody that wants to get a CDL anywhere in the US of A, has to abide by these new FMCSA rules. Now, FMCSA is one of, I think, 11 different branches of the USDOT. So FAA, Federal Airline Administration, Federal Railroads, Federal Maritime, more importantly, Federal Highway Administration. They're the administration that wrote our MUTCD, which is basically the Bible for road workers. Anybody working on the roads and highways goes by the rules in the MUTCD, and that's created by Federal Highway Administration, which is a branch of USDOT, and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They write the rules on all the signs, markings, cones, barricades, anything out there that we deal with. Our vests even have to be approved by NHTSA. That's another branch of USDOT. So there's a link here. You can't click on it because it's a YouTube video, but get on that email with the links and pause this video, take this time to click on that video because it's great information that explains a little bit about USDOT. So go ahead and pause this and do that now. Okay, well, hopefully you were able to get to that video and get back here all in one piece. But some good information about FMCSA and USDOT on that. State requirements. Washington State, I gotta tell you, from a safety perspective, all politics aside, I'm proud to be a Washingtonian because of what our state of Washington does. With the Department of L&I, they have gone above and beyond any federal organization for safety or labor laws. We have one of the lowest records of injuries or deaths in the workplace of any state, and which, if it's of any state, it's also anywhere in the world. So we're the lowest rate of accidents anywhere in the world because we are Washingtonians. So very proud of that. L&I does a fantastic job of keeping us safe as long as we follow the rules. Department of Licensing is also a part of the state of Washington. They did a great job. Their new guide. So a little bit of background. FMCSA kind of alerted everybody that they were going to put these new laws in place. And this was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Well, they kept delaying it. 2 years, 2 year delay, 2 year delay, 2 year delay. And finally, the rules went into place February 7th of 2022. But Department of Licensing in Washington Department of Licensing knew what all the rules were going to be. So they based their book off of all the new FMCSA regulations. So if you followed along with the FMCSA regulations, you can go right down the list with the commercial driver guide, and it goes right in line with it. The FMCSA and the state of Washington guide, they match each other, which is fantastic. So good on Washington to be a step ahead of that. There's also, I added this link here. You can't click on it, but I also added it on the link on your email. If you want a PDF version, which I know you all have a book version, and I have extras in the office here, so if you want another book, or if you know somebody that wants a book, you're welcome to come get one, or ask me. I can send one out to you. And then there's the link also if you want that. So Washington, our rules are above and beyond federal regulations, right? So back in 2017, Washington added more restrictions onto the CDL. So basically, if you have a CDL Class A CDL with the E restriction, that means you can only drive automatic vehicles. If you have an L restriction, you can't drive a vehicle with air brakes. So what we do is we test everybody with the fifth wheel, so you won't have that fifth wheel restriction, and we train you on a manual because it's beneficial to run a manual. A lot of our equipment is manual transmission. Basically, you can run anything. There is an exception. They have an L CDL, which FMCSA, it's a special classification. That's basically for doubles and triples trailers. We don't train for that. If you want to drive a double, triple nowadays, you have to go through certain training. We don't do that. We don't accommodate that. So if you want to drive a double or triple, you're gonna have to get training somewhere else. Anything else, you can end up with a CDL and be able to drive through this training. A message from our sponsor. This is just basically a TED Talk. It's great. It's the secrets of success, and this will help you greatly. So pause the video, click on this link off your email links. Secrets of Success in 8 words. It's a short video, probably 10 minutes or whatever it is, and then come back to me. So pause it now and then click on that link. All right, well, hopefully you were able to get into the video and learn how to survive through crap. That's my favorite part of that. So it's something, this video has information that every person needs. All right. Okay, now with that being said, we'll move on, get into the serious stuff. So FMCSR, which stands for Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, Part 380. That is the big deal when it comes to CDLs. Everybody in the United States of America that wants to get a CDL has to abide by these regulations and rules. Subpart F and G, that's the part that we are very much concerned about right now. Here's a link to it. It's also on your email. If you want to actually look at, this will take you to the website so you can see all the rules. You can scroll through it. You don't need to. As a matter of fact, I guess we can just get it out right now that a lot of this information on here, none of this is going to affect your training or your test. You don't need to know any of this stuff for your test specifically. However, it's required that you go through this training. So this training, it's good to know now, but it's going to be even better to know and to keep in mind for after you get your test and kind of go into the world of commercial drivers, because this has some good information in it. So this is new regulations, new rules, new training that we need to abide by. It's get effective February 7th. We're getting into the weeds now. This is all the details. Title 49, Subtitle B, Chapter 3, Subchapter B, Part 380. That's what you need to know. Part 380. So ELDT. This is what every driver that wants to get their CDL in the US of A needs to go through now. It's entry-level driver training. You need to go through a registered training provider, which is on the TPR training provider registry through FMCSA, which we are a registered provider. Instructors, facilities, equipment, and trainees must meet all the requirements. If you want to look into that a little deeper, you don't have to, but they are listed in 380.713, 380.709, 380.711. So that has all the information you need. Basically, instructors need to have the same level of CDL or higher that they are instructing. Facilities, you need to have safe facilities, and you need to be registered. We have the Longview shop and the Kelso shop registered as facilities. And so the reason why they want us to register the facilities is so they can make audits. They can show up and do inspections whenever they want, unannounced. So that's just something to keep in mind. All we have to say is, oh, they're out on the road. If you're not there, they're out on the road. But they might catch you there. But anyways, we have to register that. The equipment needs to meet regulations. You can't have some Sanford & Son truck. You have to have a truck or equipment and a trailer that will pass inspection and be roadworthy. Trainee requirements. So commercial learner's permit. This is your CLP. You have that. Hopefully by now you have that. That's what lets you get behind the wheel with the trainer. That's not as easy to get as it used to be. Like I said earlier, you used to just pay the $7 and ask for a permit and they give it to you. Now you have to do the knowledge test first. So good job on doing all the studying for that. We actually count your study time, and the process of getting your CLP goes toward your training. So just so you know, that helps meet your classroom hours. We'll also add some of the classroom hours from this type of training. But anyways, congratulations on getting your permit. That's a big deal. It's valid for 180 days. You can get it renewed once. That's pretty painless. If you want to go out past 360 days, which is like almost a year, then you have to pay a different fee. You have to jump through some hoops. But we've never needed anybody to get an extension in recent years, and we don't plan on having to do that with you either. So we have all the faith in you in the world. We'll get you your CDL before 180 days. You got your medical card. Hopefully you have a medical card. If you don't, pause this video, go out and get it right now. Click on the link and go get it. But no, you need to go to a medical office and get a DOT examiner card. If you have it, great, nice work. But the third most important part is positive attitude. If you don't have this, you need to go find it. Pause this video, go find it. Positive attitude is going to help you starting right now. It's going to make everything so much easier and so much better for you. So honestly, it's a big deal. You're looking at 3+ weeks of training. We have extended it a little bit for some people that might need a couple extra days or maybe a week extra of training. If you do, that's fine. Normally, by the time people get to that 3-point mark, they feel pretty good. They know whether or not they're ready. We feel pretty confident you'll be good in 3 weeks. If you're going from a B to an A, you only need 2 weeks of training. So there's a little bit different of curriculum. So now the Washington State requires 40 hours of classroom, 18 hours of street driving training, 16 hours of backing maneuvers, 16 hours of proficiency, 70 hours, which is combined lab, range, and observation. Now keep in mind that there's going to be things that your trainer thinks you need to work on. So if you need to work on, maybe you need 20 hours of backing and 14 hours of driving, we can still make it work. We could, as an employer, we're not held to the same standard as a school. So this is basically for the school. We're supposed to keep an equal or better program than the school, but it just basically allows us to tweak some things, and it's tailored for you. We want to make sure you get the training that you need, and we have the flexibility to do that, which is awesome. Okay, FMCSA training requirements. There are two major parts of the training requirements. So this part is the theory instruction. This is a big deal. This is kind of like the classroom work. This is going to be some of the book work, things that we need to just present to you. It's not the fun part. The fun part is actually going out there and grinding gears and that's that kind of stuff. But this is required, so we do need to go through this. There's the behind the wheel, which is basically broken down into two parts, which is range and public road. That's the fun part, and you're going to get there. If you're going from a B to an A, the theory criteria, the curriculum is a little bit different, but it's not different enough to actually have us change our program. It's so the difference is so minimal that we'll just stick with the same program to get you through theory and behind the wheel. Now the part 380 Appendix A, this is where we have to get into the weeds. This for the next 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about theory instruction. So theory instruction, this is 5 parts. Okay, this is where we actually get into this. So 5 parts. First part, basic operation. Second part, safe operator procedures. Third part is advanced operating practices. Then you have vehicle system and reporting malfunctions, and then non-driving activities. So those are the 5 parts of the theory instruction that we're going to cover now. It's required by FMCSA that we cover this with you, so that's what we're doing. We'll see what you can learn. So A 1.1, basic operation. A 1.1.1, orientation. So orientation, big deal. Getting to know your truck. You're going to spend the next 3 weeks getting to know your piece of equipment, your truck and trailer. So you're going to know that like the back of your hand. But what happens after you take that truck, go take your test, you pass, come back, you park the truck, chances are you're not going to get back in that truck for a long time. When you do finally hit the road on your own and get in a truck and start driving, when you have your license, it's probably going to be in a dump truck. It's probably going to be in a truck you haven't driven before. So how are you going to get to know that piece of equipment? Well, number one, operator's manual. I always stress operator's manual, which is, it's undervalued. And if you don't have an operator's manual, I'm happy to get you one. I am happy to go get operator's manuals. I go get them all the time. It's part of my job. It's what I enjoy. So that you have those. In the door, if you open up the door, there's a little panel, there's a little plate in there that will show the vehicle weights. So if you're going to be out there jumping in a truck and hitting the highway with it, you need to know your equipment. You need to know how much it weighs, how much of a load you can haul with it. What is your GVWR, which is gross vehicle weight rating, which is it'll tell you how much you can haul and how much your vehicle weighs as it is. So it'll give you an idea what kind of load you. Some dump trucks can only haul 10.1 tons. So you can't go into a pit and ask for 12 tons because you're going to be overweight. So that's your responsibility to know that. Know your limitations. Know what you can handle and what you can't. And if you aren't ready to do it, then you need to study up. You need to get to know that piece of equipment. Don't just jump in and go. You have been training the last 3 weeks on how to do a full walk around. Keep doing that. be in the habit and the practice of doing that for the next piece of equipment you get into, and the next, and the next, and the next. Get to know that piece of equipment just as well as you know that truck and trailer that you're training on right now. A1.1.2, control systems and dashboard. You don't have to tell me. I know you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours learning that control system and the dashboard. But you're going to get into the next piece of equipment down the road, and you're going to have plow controls, you're going to have hoist controls, you're going to have different radio, you're going to have all kinds of different controls on what you're used to and what you've been trained on. So get to know those, and if you don't know the controls on that unit, you shouldn't be out there driving it. If you're in a position where you think the job is being held up because you need to get familiar, tell your supervisor, hey, I need to take 30 minutes to look over this truck, get to know it, get to go through the operator's manual. And if that's a problem, call me. It shouldn't be, but if it is, call me. Safety components, that's just standard stuff like seat belts and mirrors. They're backup cameras. Some trucks have backup cameras. The one you're training on doesn't, but the next one you might get into might have a backup camera. So do you know how to use that? Parking brakes and trailer brakes, they're different. They're different on different pieces of equipment. If you can't figure out what the difference is, you shouldn't be in that piece of equipment. So take the time to get to know that. Get to know what kind of braking system you have. Do you have hydraulic brakes or air brakes? That's something you need to know. Does the ABS system work? Do you know what an ABS system is? Doing the walk around, I know you do. If you look in the commercial driver's guide, this is a fantastic resource for explaining. ABS is in there, all braking, everything's in there. So it's a great resource to look back on. Definitely want to check your dash periodically throughout the day as you've been trained and as you know. But that still comes into play in the future. A1.1.3, pre-trip and post-trip inspections. Now you know that the pre-trip and post-trip you're doing right now for training. Will you continue to do that in the future? That is the question. A lot of people don't. I'm telling you, there's no reason why you shouldn't. It's a good habit to get into. You're an expert at that. If you don't do it, you're going to forget. Next time you're in a piece of equipment, if it's different, do that same walk around, locate your compressor, check the belts, look for leaking fluid, all that stuff. Just get in the habit of continuing to do that. Inspections through the day might be necessary. It might take more than just a pre-trip. It might take more than a pre-trip and a post-trip. Sometimes you might need to, maybe you're hauling around a rock and you want to find a place to stop and make sure nothing's falling off your truck. Make sure you don't have a rock in your duals. You have to remember that that's the driver's responsibility to make sure that truck is intact and make sure it's safe. If you get on the freeway, you have a piece of 4 to 6 inch rock in between your duals, flies out, kills somebody. There's going to be a full-on investigation on that, and they're going to look for every way they can to pin it on you. So make sure you cover yourself. Always keep yourself covered. Know where the best places to be. Like, I go into the shop for lunch, do another walk around when you get out of your truck or before you get back in. Do you know the equipment as well as the equipment that you know now, the one that you're training on? So that's something to keep in mind in the future. Okay, remember that. A1.1.4, basic controls. Just remember, of course, obviously, the truck you're driving is way different than a car or pickup truck. This unit you're driving, taking it on the road, weighs 30,000 pounds. If it's loaded, it could be 75. I mean, all different weights. There's a lot of differences between that truck and your car or truck that you drive at home. It turns differently. You've heard of off-tracking. Off-tracking is when your rear tires don't take the same path that your front tires do. I mean, every truck off-tracks differently. Something to keep in mind. Your equipment's going to accelerate slower. It's going to stop slower. You can't buzz around. You can't be like, oh crap, I am in the wrong lane, and just dart over to the other lane. And sometimes you might have to make a 1 mile loop to try to get back to where you were, because you just don't have that type of reaction with the big rig. It's just the way it is. There's also places you can't go. Have you ever been out in your Honda or your personal vehicle and said, hey, I wonder what the weight limit is on this bridge, or I wonder what the height on this overpass is? Those are things you need to know. That's your driver's responsibility. So height and weight restrictions, they're out there. It's a real thing. 1.1.5, shifting and operating transmissions. We have all different types of transmissions. We have manuals and automatics, and the manuals, just because they're manual doesn't mean that they're the same. They have different shifting patterns. Some it's a standard H, some it has like 5 branches, and then you split it and you have 5 more. Some have 4 and 4. Some have a 3-way splitter. So they're all different. So it's gonna be a learning curve. They're all gonna be different than that truck that you're learning to drive in now. So just be aware of that. Learning when to shift and when not to shift. Don't shift coming down hills, because what happens if you try to shift coming down a hill and you miss the gear? You're never going to get it back in gear. That truck's going to go careening down the road, gaining speed. You're going to try to rely on your brakes. Your brakes are going to give out. You could launch off some cliff, or you could ram into the back of somebody, or in an intersection. I'm telling you, shifting is not trying to scare you, but a little bit of fear can help you create respect for that unit. Which gear to start out at? If I'm empty, I might start in second or third, depending on how strong the transmission is. If I'm loaded, I'll probably start in first or second. Those are things that you'll get practiced at, but all trucks are geared a little bit differently, so you're not going to start in the same gears with every truck, with every load. It's all going to be different. Don't coast. Don't coast down the hill. Don't coast coming in. Obviously you're trained to not coast, but knowing why you can't coast is the important part. You need that transmission. You need to be in gear to be able to control that piece of equipment. It's a big piece of equipment. 1.1.5, backing and docking. Now, we don't do a lot of docking. I mean, some of our tankers do, but we do a lot of backing. GOAL is our good acronym for means get out and look. It's always best to get out and look. There might be things there that you don't see from inside the cab, but also you can get an idea by getting out, doing a quick walk around, see what you're up against. It's a good thing. It's good practice. Now, we don't do much docking, but we spend a lot of time backing. I mean, ditching, chip sealing, which is also called oiling, shoulder rocking. We spend hours upon hours and upon hours doing those things, and those are all backing. So we spend hours backing. So you're going to end up getting pretty good at backing up. But just realize that's not safe. It's not as safe as driving forward, because it's blind spot back there. So that you just be aware of that. Proper docking procedures need to be addressed. Now, you're not going to have to back a trailer up to a dock. You most likely won't have to at this job. What if you leave here and go work somewhere else? They're going to say, well, do you know about docking? And now you can say, yeah, I had this really awesome guy that trained me about 1.1.5 back in 2023. So, but that's something to be aware of in the future. 1.1.5, coupling and uncoupling. Basically, we have all kinds of different couplings devices. We have fifth wheels, we have pintle hitches. Pintle hitches have subtypes. Fifth wheels have subtypes. Not all trucks and trailers work well together. We have one truck that has an adjustable fifth wheel and adjustable plate, and it won't work with the trailer until it's adjusted. So don't assume that a fifth wheel is going to work with a fifth wheel. Pintle hitches. We have different types of pintle hitches. So just make sure you're familiar with that. Don't take off and hit the road until you know and understood what type of coupling and how it functions. Let's see here. 1A, okay, this is the next chapter in our theory part of our training. So it's A1.2, Safe Operator Procedures. A1.2.1, Visual Search. This is all about keeping your eyes open, focusing on the road ahead, avoid distractions, keep your head on a swivel, always know what's beside you, behind you, in front of you, but always be watching out in front, because your vehicle equipment is going to be moving in that direction. You need to know what's in your path. So what you'll be watching for: hazards, pedestrians, and tweakers. Look out for those tweakers. They do not care how big or fast your vehicle is. They will walk right out in front of you. I'm telling you. And then they'll say it's your fault. Okay. So a good idea on watching for hazards. A good example is the move over law. You're on the freeway, you're looking ahead, you see a tow truck or a state patrol pulled over on the shoulder. The move over law, state of Washington, requires you to get over for the safety of those people. Move over into the center lane. So that's a good example of visual search and watching down the road and paying attention. Drive defensively. When you're out there, there's a lot of people on the road. They're not going to be paying attention as well as you are. You still have to watch out for them. Watch for distracted drivers. I see people down with their heads down on their phone, either stopped at a light or even while they're driving. I don't know how people can look down and drive at the same time, but you watch out for those people. Another thing that really, one of my pet peeves, is when I'm driving on a 2-lane road, oncoming traffic crosses that center line into my lane. That's one of the things that it bothers me. So just watch out for that. 1.2.2, communication. This is a big one. What's the best form of communication? Is it to give them the bird? Well, probably not. As a county employee, you need to remember you represent the county. That big county emblem is on the side of your truck. As much as you would like to, as much as you have the right to flip them the bird, can't do it. You got to use proper communication. So that involves proper signaling, which could be headlights, flashing headlights, turn signals. Obviously, that's a good way to communicate. It's required. 4-way flashers. You can use the horn. Horn is better than the bird. It's good to make eye contact. Now, if you're waving somebody through, if you're going like this, that's not as good as like, hey, you, go ahead. So make eye contact. Eye contact is a big deal. It's a great way to communicate when you're out on the road. We also have beacons and strobes. Now, beacons and strobes are important because having your beacon on or your strobe light on can make you go from just being a weirdo that's parked in the middle of the road to being in a work zone. If you're a mobile work zone, you're a mobile unit with your strobe on, you are considered a work zone. So we actually had a guy get rear-ended, and the guy that rear-ended our truck said that he was sweeping, actually, so it was a sweeper. He said that he was just working in the middle of the road, no signs. Well, he had a strobe light on, so that made him legal to do his job and work. So it was the other guy's fault. So remember, that's a tool. It's a great tool of yours. 1.2.3, distracted driving. This is a big one. 5,500 people get killed in the United States every year. 5,500 people in the U.S. get killed because of distracted driving. Almost 500,000 people in the United States get injured from distracted driving because of cell phones. So calling and texting is a no-go. If there's an accident and there's an investigation, they can take your phone, and they will take your phone. There's going to be a full investigation. They're going to take your phone. They're going to go through it and determine whether or not you were on that phone. Radios and technology could also be a form of distraction. Now keep in mind that if you are using any of these for an emergency, you are exempt. You can. That's what you are allowed to do that. If you are contacting a supervisor or somebody else regarding an emergency or the authorities, you can be on your phone, and it is legal. To always pay attention, visual attention to your surroundings at all times. Manual control, use both hands. If you don't have both hands on the wheel, you still need both hands to drive, so keep both of those hands unoccupied, off your phone. Wait till break time, wait till you pull off the side of the road, then check your text. And remember, we are being paid to come to work and be mindful, to pay attention to what we're doing. That's our job. We're not getting paid to show up to work and answer our texts or think about how mad we are at our wife or anything like that. We're paid to show up to work and focus on what we're doing. That's how we get our paychecks. 1.2.4, speed management. Now, a big 50,000 pound piece of equipment is going to stop a lot slower, and it's going to take a lot longer for it to stop. So perception distance plus reaction distance plus braking distance is your total stopping distance. So here's a little graphic I pulled right out of the Washington Department of Licensing commercial guide. This here is supposed to be a football field. So it shows you if you're if you're traveling 55 miles per hour, it's going to take you 419 feet to stop by the time that you see what's happening, then you react, and then you actually hit the brakes. It's going to be 419 feet. That's a football field plus a third of another football field. Even if you're only doing 35, you're looking at 222 feet. So that's not enough to keep you from running over a flagger or whatever hazard or a tweaker. So just be aware of that. 1.2.5, space management. So that's basically the buffer around your vehicle that you need to have at all times. It's easiest to have a buffer when you're on the freeway. When you're in the middle of town, cars are going to do what they want, but you still need to be aware of what's in front of you, what's behind you, what's off to the sides, what's above you. That's also important to realize how tall you are. I mean, if you're hauling one of our excavators, you need to know the height on that, and if you're going to be coming around driving through any low lines, that's your responsibility to know the height of that vehicle and keep that buffer space. Obviously, you're going to take a wide swath when you turn, so those are things to be aware about. 1.2.6, night driving. Night driving is more dangerous. That's why we suggest having a rider when you're doing night driving operations. Now, it's not in the policy. Some people ask why we don't have it in the policy. The reason is because we want to have that flexibility for the driver to make that decision on whether he needs somebody or not. Some drivers, I know as a rider, you're probably saying every driver needs to have a rider. But once you become a driver, your perspective might change. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you just have whatever's assigned to you. But when you're driving, it's good to have somebody with you. I always enjoyed having somebody in case they needed to spot me, or if they needed to jump out and help me cut a tree, because you're not allowed to be out there cutting trees by yourself. So at nighttime, it's good to have that extra set of eyes. Markings can be hard to see at nighttime. If they don't freshen up their paint stripes every year like the county does, some of these roads are hard to see, especially when it's dark and it rains. At nighttime, there's glare. If there's an oncoming car and a deer crosses in front of you, you're not even going to see the deer because you're going to have that glare in your eye. Just something to be aware of. And sometimes we get those nighttime call-outs, and you get those 2 a.m. drivers. And usually those 2 a.m. drivers, they're something to be fearful for or fearful of, because you know that they're probably coming home from the bar. And then fatigue. Fatigue is a real thing. People get tired at night. That's just the way it is. So you got to know when to set your limitations for yourself. If you can't do the job, you need to speak up. Keep yourself safe. 1.2.7 extreme driving conditions. We have fog, which it's good practice. Anytime there's fog, day or night, turn on your lights. A lot of our trucks don't have the automatic lights like our personal vehicles do, so hopefully they will in the future, but for now, everything's manual. Turn on those lights. Wintertime, I spent hours behind the wheel of a snowplow and in the passenger seat too, and when it's coming down, it's cold outside and there's snow, we would have to blast our defroster to keep our windshield from freezing over. So that means it'd be colder than heck outside, but we'd have our windows down and our defroster up high when it's 30 degrees out. So to keep that windshield heated up. I know that the new trucks are a lot better than the old trucks were, but having that strong defroster really helps. Chains and bungees, that's part of the job to keep those in good shape and functional. When you're working out in the heat during the summer, you want to have a good air conditioner. Believe me, I know all about that. So make sure you get those serviced in spring before summer hits. Coolant levels. We've had trucks throw an engine light on and it goes into shutdown mode. We'll have a mechanic show up, come from Central, drive all the way out there and say, hey, you're just low on coolant. Pretty embarrassing. Not only embarrassing, but it drains that equipment fund, because that $300 that just got billed to that truck comes out of that ER&R fund, and it is all because you didn't check the coolant. So make sure your fluids are topped off. All right, the next part of the theory training, A1.3 Advanced Operating Practices. 1.3.1 Hazard Perception. Now, we do not have normal driving environments at our job, if there is such a thing, because it seems crazy no matter what you do out there, but ours is even worse, because we're out there plowing when everybody else should be home. They need to stay home, but they don't. So we need to try to get those roads cleared. But we're out there in the wind, mud, steep inclines, oily roads, rain, ice, anything else that nature throws at us. And county drivers are inherently the ones to blame for everything. I don't know why it is. We're just trying to help. We're trying to do the right thing out there, but people just go berserk, go bonkers, and want to blame us. So always cover yourself. Don't give them a reason to find fault in what we do. 1.3.2 Skid Control and Recovery. Skids can be caused by over-braking, which is jabbing the brakes. If you jab on the brakes on ice, you're going to start skidding. You're going to lock up those brakes. So just apply a steady amount of pressure. If you do lock them up, release, and then apply pressure again. It can be also caused from oversteering, over-acceleration, over anything, pretty much, or driving too fast. When you jackknife, here's a little graphic of your truck wanting to go one way, your trailer wanting to go the other. You got to steer into the skid. Don't be one of those YouTube videos of that truck jackknifing on the highway or freeway. And that can all be helped by proper speed, knowing your road conditions and how to negotiate those conditions. So let off the brake and counter steer. 1.3.3 Railroad and highway grade crossings. I know you're going over some of that with your trainer. That's part of the test normally. Our number one rule for safety, always assume that there's a train coming. Even if you can see both directions, just always assume that there's going to be a train. Don't ever park on the tracks if you think, you maybe doubt that there's enough room there for you to get behind the car in front of you. Then just stay back. Just leave a huge gap. Don't chance it. Don't risk it. Be responsible. All right, next chapter is A1.4, Vehicle Systems and Reporting Malfunctions. This is something that we like to improve on a little bit. Not saying that anybody's horrible out there, but there's always room for improvement, right? Identification 1.4.1 Identification and diagnosis malfunctions. Any warnings should be identified. If you have an ABS light, you have an engine light, report those. Report those to your supervisor. Let's get those taken care of. You shouldn't have to be driving around some truck with an engine light on. Treat the equipment like it's your own. I've always said, if it was your own, would you be driving with a check engine light on? Probably, because you'd have to pay for it to get fixed. Here, you don't have to pay for it. There's no excuses. You can just report it. We can get it fixed. There's also a little exclamation point in a triangle that might show up on your dash. What does that mean? Well, good question. That means you should consult your operator's manual and get that figured out, because that's your responsibility to know that. All right, A1.4 Vehicle Systems and Reporting. Oh, this is the same one. 1.4.2 Roadside Inspections. So just remember, as a CDL, the rules change a little bit. You are subject to inspection at any given time. They can pull you over without a reason. You can't be like, oh, you're being racist. No, it's nothing like that. They have the right. USDOT, WSDOT, inspectors, patrolmen, law enforcement authorities, anybody, they can pull you over and they can inspect your vehicle at any time. It can be a random. And they can take your vehicle out of service. A lot of times people will have you pull over, and if you can't fix it, you have to have it towed. Just remember, negligence comes with a fine if there's some issues that you are getting fined for, and if it's something that the driver's responsibility to find and correct those, the county won't pay the fine. That fine goes under your name, and you have to pay for it or show up to court under your license. So that fine will come out of your pocket. 1.4.3 Maintenance. So now we have great mechanics, very proud of our mechanic staff, but there are some things that are still the driver's responsibility to take care of. Things like oil, coolant, the belts, all the things that we carry. We inventory these things at the shops so that the driver can replace them and add if they're low. That is the driver's responsibility to keep those things maintained. All right, this is a new chapter. A1.5 Non-driving activities. 1.5.1 Handling and documenting cargo. Now this kind of affects over-the-road truckers, because you think about it, over-the-road truckers will spend the night at rest stations and in parking lots, and they're responsible for their cargo not leaking, not getting damaged, not getting stolen. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that too much, but a couple situations we might have are lowboy, maybe tanker drivers. You need to be mindful of, just because your trailer might haul 30,000 pounds doesn't mean you can put it all on one axle. When you go through the weigh station, that's going to have to be dispersed properly in order for it to not be overweight. So that is something that you will have to learn and you'll have to be responsible for. So there's a lot of responsibilities that go along with your CDL, and that's all on you. So, but we're sure we can get you trained up. You'll get it all figured out. We don't expect you to throw on a 30,000 pound piece of equipment and just go for it without properly being trained and prepared. If you're involved in an accident while overweight or improperly tied down cargo, you could be at fault. They will do a full investigation, and if they find that you were negligent or that you didn't load the truck properly, you were overweight, they could not only fine you, but they could sue you. It could get pretty ugly. 1.5.2 Environmental compliance issues. So we don't haul hazardous waste very much, but as soon as you start spilling oil on the road, that's considered a hazardous spill. you're going to get Department of Ecology. You can get fined. You could be subject to city, county, state, and federal requirements and laws and fines. 1.5.3 hours of service requirements. Now, Cowlitz County is exempt from hours of service. So normally, a driver can only drive for 11 hours drive time within a 14-hour or 15-hour window of time, within a 24-hour period. For us, we're exempt from that because we're going to get called in, we're going to work a full shift, then we're going to get called back in, and we're going to plow. But we do have to remember to balance public safety with our own safety. So while you want to answer the call to go out and plow the road and serve the public, you still need to be aware of your own safety. If you're out there working 18 hours and you're barely hanging on, you're angry, you're tired, you're hungry, you're going to you could potentially put yourself in an unsafe situation. So make sure you are your own advocate for knowing when to set your limits. We don't have logbooks here, but non-governmental agencies, big private companies, all the over-the-road truckers, they either have paper logbooks or transponders. A lot of the newer trucks have the automatic transponders, so they can't do anything without everybody knowing their business. But that's what they deal with. 1.5.4, fatigue and wellness awareness. Don't drive tired. We had one situation where we had a guy that was driving, it was a county employee a long time ago, and he fell asleep, ran the truck off the road, ran into a tree. Well, he was too embarrassed to admit that he fell asleep, so he said he blacked out. Well, he actually put himself in an even worse situation because it became a medical issue where he couldn't drive again until he was cleared. He had to do a series of tests. A medical examiner had to have him multiple appointments to make sure it wasn't a neurological or heart issue, cardiological issue. So it was a big ordeal. It was over a year. It was a little over a year that he went without his license. He still maintained his employment. He was very fortunate. But he went without a license for a long time. Well, even falling asleep at the wheel, you still have, there's a lot that could go wrong there. You could lose your license for a long time. You could get sued. I mean, there's a lot of things that could. So don't drive tired. Chronic and acute driver fatigue, that's a real thing. My sister-in-law has chronic driver fatigue, which she can watch a movie at the theater. She won't fall asleep, but when she gets behind the wheel, she gets tired. And I think it's because of the motion and everything. It's a real thing. Chronic and acute driver fatigue. If you have this, keep yourself safe, keep everybody else safe, and deal with it the right way. 1.5.5, post-crash procedures. So if you get in a crash, protect the area. Make sure that it's not going to become more of a problem that you crashed, creating more crashes. So protect the area, call law enforcement right away, and your supervisor. You're going to have weird situations happen over the course of your career. I've had it happen where a lady ran into me and didn't damage me because she hit my hitch, but she didn't want to get the police involved, so she said, "Oh, it's fine." Well, there was a pretty good dent on her car, and I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, ma'am. It's our policy, which it is, to call law enforcement first, right away, first thing." What could happen if that lady went home? Her husband could get all mad about it and call the county, call commissioners, and we would end up paying the bill. We would end up paying for that even though we were at 0% fault. So whenever there's an accident, call law enforcement, call your supervisor. One of the important things, let your supervisor shoulder some of that burden with you. It's going to stress you out. You don't need to do that alone. You can pass some of the weight off on your supervisor. That's our job. That's their job. We just want to make sure you're safe, but do things the right way. Use the right protocol. Give aid to any injured people. We're trained, so you are trained to help people, so you can do that. 1.5.6 external communications. Keeping your employer updated on status of your license or medical card is required. Now, the specifics, especially with medical, your medical business is your business. There's privacy there. We don't want to cross that line, but there is a responsibility there to keep us updated. Renewing either one, license or medical card, is the driver's responsibility. I do send out reminders, but it's a courtesy. Communication's part of our job. As public employees, we need to be professional. We need to be cooperative. If we go into a weigh station or we get pulled over by an inspector, remember they're doing their job, and part of our job is to be professional. You do represent the county. 1.5.7 whistleblower or coercion. So here's a link for if you want to delve into this law a little bit further. It's on the link on your email. Basically, it's if you are told to do something that is unsafe or it violates the rules, you should report it. Don't feel like you should be ashamed, or don't feel like your psychological or physical safety is being compromised, because we would never put you in a position like that. You are protected. You should report it, and you cannot be retaliated against if you do report a safety issue or a violation. If you'd like to, you can talk to me. I'll be your guy. I'll be your teammate. We can come to a solution. If you feel like you need to take it above my head, you can do that. You have the right to do that too. But you are protected, just so you know. 1.5.8 trip planning. When you don't have to worry about this, obviously, throughout your training. Well, actually, you do. There's going to be places on your route where you might have to look ahead. You might have to plan ahead. This is mostly for over-the-road truckers, but occasionally you will be sent maybe to Sumner to take a mower or an excavator up there and drop it off. Find out where the your low height, your overpasses are, or any kind of issues like that. What hazards will you find? What hazards, overpasses or bridges, rail crossings, heavy traffic areas. One of my favorite things, roundabout. Try taking a truck and trailer through a roundabout. They always suck, but at least if you know ahead of time that you're going to be faced with that, you can prepare. So that's all part of trip planning. 1.5.9 drugs and alcohol. Cowlitz County has zero tolerance policy, so if you are in a piece of equipment, zero tolerance for drugs or alcohol. Even though marijuana is legal in the state of Washington, it is not allowed to be in your system while you are driving a county vehicle. Once you get your CDL, you get placed into a different category of people. You'll be added to the DOT list for random testing, so that could come up at any time. So they want to. There's laws in place. It's required. We have to have a list for random testing to send people in periodically to get tested. Washington DOL has a threshold of 0.04%, which if you're in a commercial vehicle, it's half the legal limit outside. But there again, anytime you're at Cowlitz County in a vehicle, it's 0.04. And even if you're a CDL holder, we'd have to look at this law, but if you're a CDL holder and you're driving a personal vehicle, you still have a 0.04% threshold. Alcohol is related to over 20,000 deaths a year. So think about that. That's like almost a quarter of the population of Cowlitz County dying in 1 year because of alcohol. If you get pulled over for an inspection and you're in a CDL vehicle, if you have a .0001, that's enough for them to take your vehicle out of service. Any detection at all whatsoever of blood alcohol content will get you out of put out of service. 1.5.10 medical requirements. Now, every CDL driver needs to have a current valid medical card. We use Lower Columbia Occupational Health because all you have to do is make an appointment. You can go in there, they direct bill Cowlitz County for your medical examination. You can also use your own provider. What you would do is you'd go in, you'd pay for your visit, which will probably be $120, and then you'll bring the receipt back. We can reimburse you. But for us, the easiest thing, for a lot of people, they'd rather just not pay that, so they go directly to Lower Columbia Occupational Health. They have a contract with us. Medical information is private. However, if your card is not renewed, you are ineligible to drive. But let me know, because I can help you out. We can make appointments. We can make adjustments. I do send out reminders, like I mentioned earlier. I do track everybody's expiration dates for CDLs and medical cards, and I do send reminders out as a courtesy. It's still the driver's responsibility to know when those expire and to renew them. It's not your supervisor's job or my job. It's your job. But I'm happy to try to help you out and help you keep on track. That's what I'm trying to do. So that was our theory portion of the training. Now we're just going to touch on a few things behind the wheel training. These are things you're going to be and need to be considering when you're out there doing your behind the wheel training. First part, range. A2.1, vehicle inspections pre-trip, en route, and post-trips. Pre-trip inspection should be done every morning. That's something we don't do the write-up sheets, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do your pre-trip every morning. When you're out on the road, you're still responsible for the piece of equipment and the mechanical integrity of it. So just because you do a pre-trip in the morning doesn't mean you can drive it for 12 hours and it can fall apart. Because you are subject to random inspection. Don't forget about that. Post-trip inspections. Leaving it better than it was when you found it. That's a good example. It's a good rule to live by. Attitude is everything. If you have a good attitude, you want to help your fellow workers. You want to keep that equipment running for a long time. It's really all about attitude. Now, A2.2 through A2.6 will be all about backing. Your straight line backing, your alley dock backing, your offsets, even parallel parking. Now, parallel parking, the first three you'll be doing until you master it. The last two you won't do much. You won't be tested on it at all. But practice it, because if you could parallel park that truck, what a boss you would be, right? But it'd also be good to do in case of emergency. And it's required to practice that. So practice it at least once when you're going through your training. A2.7, coupling and uncoupling. You have to be able to demonstrate coupling, inspecting, and uncoupling combination units. You might not be doing this during your test, but it is required during your training that you demonstrate that you can couple and uncouple that equipment. You'll probably do it here or there, so that will work. But it's not just about connecting it and you're good to go. You have to do full-on disconnecting and connecting. Disconnecting is the hoses, chock the wheels, and then connecting it back up. You want to supply it with air. You want to check your ABS system. So we need to work with fifth wheel and pintle hitches, which we both have. Here's a couple diagrams of some pintle hitches straight out of the DOL CDL book. Now behind the wheel, the next segment of your training, first part is public road. Let's see here, A3.1, vehicle controls. This is basically all your standard left turn, right turn signals, lane changes, curves at high speed. Now don't try to take on curves at high speed for training. Just know that taking on curves at high speeds is a bad thing. Entry and exiting from interstates or highways, that's something you'll work on. A3.2, shifting and transmissions. Now we train it, like we said, on manual and transmissions, but one element that we're supposed to talk about is fuel efficiency. Using a manual transmission is fuel efficient, especially the way I drive. Like a grandma, I use low gears. I always shift in that 900 to 1500 RPM range, where a lot of guys will do the 1200 to 1800, and I'm more of a relaxed low RPM driver. I'd like to keep my RPMs low and my heart rate. Just be aware of, like we said earlier, every truck will have a different shifting pattern. The best one is this one. It's the good old 20 speed. A3.3, communications and signaling. That's pretty standard. A3.4, visual search. We talked about that. A3.5. Now these are things you'll be working on behind the wheel. We talked about the theory part, but this is behind the wheel. So these are actually things you will practice. Speed and space management. Just remember your good speed habits. We have heard of people with bad speed habits, and they have bad reputations. Don't be that guy. Be a person with good reputation, with good speed habits. Remember, road conditions will always change, and they will affect your speed and space management. Situational, environmental, that's spelled wrong, awareness. But basically that's just saying, don't worry about the spelling, just be aware of what's around you. A3.6, safe driver behavior. We talked about safety. We talked about A3.7, hours of service were exempt. A3.8, hazard perception, watching for hazards. Remember that move over law. A3.9, railroads. Our trainers are well versed in that. A3.10, night operation. A3.11, extreme driving conditions. So, okay, A3.10, night operations, you are approved, and you should, I would say you should make some time to come in and do some training at night, just a couple hours. That would be, it's part of the curriculum. It's something that you and your trainer need to talk about, and you can run it by your supervisor, of course. Just let them know, hey, we're going to come in. It's all approved. No questions asked. There shouldn't be. And if there is a problem, have them contact me. A311, extreme driving conditions, heavy rain, high wind, fog, snow, ice, steep grades, and sharp curves. We do all of those things every day. A312, skid control recovery, jackknifing, and other emergencies. We've talked a little bit about that, so hopefully you won't have any of those happen during your test. So theory instruction for the upgrade, we'll just touch on this real quick. This is BA 1.1 through BA 1.5.2, and it's really the same as the curriculum, theory, and everything from that we went over, which was A 1.1 to A 3.3.12. It's all the same information except a few things. The parts on handling and documenting cargo, environmental compliance, post-crash procedures, external communications, whistleblower coercion, trip planning, drugs and alcohol, and medical requirements were omitted. They were taken out, which I think there's some good valid points. So we're just going to leave those in there. We're not going to worry about the upgrade theory instruction. We're going to go a step higher, step better, and just stick with the same theory instruction for Class A. So now that is it for our theory training. So thank you very much. If you have questions, hopefully you got a list. If you have questions, you want to get a hold of me, here's my number, here's my email. I want to send a special thank you out to truckersauthority.com. That's the one with the DOT and FMCSA, the first video you opened. I called them, and the owner gave me permission to put that link in our presentation for training. He said, I'd be honored if you put that in your training. How cool is that? So I told him, hey, I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to send you a copy. It's Oscar. It was Oscar that that gave us permission. So how cool is that? Welcome to use any of these links. Thank you for all these FMCSA and for all these groups. And if you have any questions, get a hold of me. Feel free to come back onto this training and check it out again. Best of luck to you in your testing and in your success.